How's it going, everybody? So in this video I'm going to be responding to a recent comment from one of my subscribers who's definitely new to my content because I've already explained the mechanisms behind their issues and how to solve them and how simple it actually is and all these things in most of my videos in the last 6 to 9 months. But nonetheless, I'm going to be making this a shorter video because I've already made like an hour-long video responding to that comment, and a lot of people don't have the focus capacity to actually watch the whole thing because they haven't trained that skill yet. But yeah, so let's kind of dive into it. Okay, so this person says that there's two things. Number one, they say they have ADHD. Okay, that's a different separate video, separate discussion, because it's not entirely related to the first problem, even though they may think it is. But solving the first problem will actually help the ADHD as well. Actually, it'll help it, but ADHD has a very specific kind of way of remedying, okay? But the problems that they're talking about is irritable bowel syndrome. They said that they've dealt with their entire life, first of all. And second of all, they said they have mysterious muscle pain that doctors have told them is fibromyalgia. And they believe that that diagnosis of fibromyalgia is bunk, okay? And so in this video, I'm going to explain the solution to your problem and the mechanisms. And I'm also going to explain why the supplement routines and the probiotics and all the other overcomplicated things that most medical practitioners and functional medicine doctors and whatnot are going to tell you to do are missing the mark and are probably just a waste of money and time. Because I actually had these problems and spent years paying hundreds of dollars for supplements and not getting anywhere. And then eventually when I solved my issues with a simple elimination diet, I realized how disappointed, I was like, holy fuck, the solution was this simple all along. So anyway, let's see. So this person, I don't even want to get into all the discussion because there's a lot of just silly information in this discussion so far. But basically, they have had irritable bowel syndrome for all their life, and they're consulting with a functional medicine doctor that says that he believes the root cause of this person's problems is gut dysbiosis. Okay. And so for those who don't know, gut dysbiosis is the idea that there might be pathogenic organisms in their intestine, so things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, Candida albicans, as well as kind of like an imbalance of good bacteria to bad bacteria, okay? And maybe underproduction of stomach acid, maybe underproduction of digestive enzymes. And then also, there's also this underlying idea or suspicion that the gut lining, the intestinal lining, might be damaged. And then you have undigested food particles passing through the gut lining, triggering an abnormal autoimmune response, which in a nutshell describes autoimmunity. Okay? And so first of all, I want to say that this is a really good working hypothesis to use to drive you towards understanding the mechanism behind how to solve the problem. However, what I will say is that the problem that most practitioners run into is they have a very pharmaceutical grade, mainstream medicine understanding of how to treat the problem that doesn't actually make people better. So what most practitioners do with gut dysbiosis and autoimmune disorders and irritable bowel syndrome is they try to kill the bad bacteria with apple cider vinegar, which I think is actually not a bad idea. That actually helps, but through indirect mechanisms. And by the way, I made a whole hour-long dissertation, like lecture, with timestamps, where I went point by point, completely obliterating and debunking all the research behind probiotic supplements and talking about why things like fermented foods and apple cider vinegar work, but not by growing good bacteria in your intestine, okay? If you want to watch that video, I didn't even have an outline but I made like a crazy dissertation. I know this fucking shit like the back of my hand, way better than these other people who are trying to get you on these damn supplements and shit. Which again, I'm very passionate about the subject, so pardon me if I sound offensive or derogatory, because I spent like years of my life trying to solve this issue, buying all these supplements and doing these certain diet protocols and all this shit. I spent thousands of dollars for years trying to solve it with these supplements and other things and candida cleanse protocols and whatnot. When in reality, what actually solved my problems was removing all whole grains, beans, nuts and seeds, and raw vegetables at first, and basically doing beef, fruit, and then eventually I added non-starchy frozen vegetables, like cooked vegetables, like cauliflower and broccoli and stuff, right? But most people don't want to believe that their complicated problems that they are like suffering with and have been suffering with their entire life can be solved with such a simple thing. Also, I'll say I had an ex-girlfriend who had fibromyalgia. I lived with her for 5 years, and it was really, really bad, where she'd like, oh my God, like she'd have these crazy episodes of pain. And I had her just eliminate all sources of gluten and gliadin, not just gluten, but the gliadin protein as well, from wheat and rye and barley and whatnot, as well as peanuts, because she'd be munching on like a 5-pound bag of peanuts throughout the day for a snack. And it turns out she must have had a peanut allergy or an intolerance to it, as well as wheat and gluten and whatnot. And even drinking triple distilled alcohol for some reason, even though it's supposed to be gluten-free because they triple distilled the gluten out of it, still triggered her problem. But this person says they have muscle pain, right? They said that they don't believe they have fibromyalgia. It's also important to understand when we label symptoms as fibromyalgia or ADHD or even irritable bowel syndrome, the label is not important. When we call something fibromyalgia, like you might be experiencing muscle pain that might fit the description of fibromyalgia, but my ex-girlfriend and other close friends I know that had fibromyalgia, they have crippling neurological pain where nothing they do helps, okay? And they're just twitching and cringing in pain. It's really bad. It's not just like severe muscle pain. It's neurological pain. But you see in these carnivore diet communities, thousands of people resolving these problems by eating nothing but meat. I don't think plant foods are bad for you. I think these people have triggers from gut dysbiosis or whatever it is. They're now intolerant to these foods and can't digest them properly, and that triggers the abnormal immune response, and that releases pro-inflammatory cytokines and other immune molecules that trigger pain response. Because we have to understand pain. This person also asked me if I know about some guy named Dr. Sarno, who's like a back pain expert. So that guy is very old school. If you want to know the updated research on what that guy was talking about, the mind-body connection in pain, look up the biopsychosocial model of pain theory. Okay, specifically, barbell medicine has really good lectures on pain. That basically is a similar thing, but it describes a more practical solutions. Okay, not some other nonsense. Anyway, let's dive it back. So there's a lot of fucking people, thousands of people who have legitimate documentation of resolving irritable bowel syndrome. Myself, I had really bad irritable bowel syndrome. I had psoriasis. I had panic disorder. I had all sorts of problems that I resolved using my methods. Panic disorder is a different story, but there's a lot of people in Facebook groups and Reddit forums and other forums, YouTube videos that YouTube won't recommend you if you're not already searching for it, because the way their algorithm works, everything's an echo chamber now. Real people, lots of people have solved these issues by eliminating the food that's triggering it, okay? So let me get back to the gut dysbiosis thing, okay? So look, here's the thing, okay? So first of all, get tested for Epstein-Barr. Get a real test for Epstein-Barr, the Epstein-Barr virus, okay? A lot of people have low-grade Lyme disease, and they might have been bitten by a tick or something like that when they were young. That can trigger all of these problems. And I had a friend who had Epstein-Barr. He had Lyme disease, and instead of getting on these elimination diets even, that actually people with Lyme disease have found completely resolved their Epstein-Barr, the symptoms at least. This guy was still eating beans and shit like that, but his doctor had him on all these supplements and all this shit, and he was all fucked up. And I'm like, bro, just eat the meat and fruit diet for 4 weeks and see what happens. This guy's like, no, I need the beans and blah, 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 and I trust in my doctor. And it's like, this guy's wigging out all the time. This guy is not healthy. What his doctor is trying to get him to do is not helping. And anyway, I have consulted with clients who literally have had issues like this, and they've been consulting with Chinese medicine doctors and alternative practitioners for decades, not getting anywhere. And then they work with me for a couple of weeks, and their symptoms go away completely. And usually it starts with them like, holy fuck, I can't believe just removing the tomatoes and the capsicum vegetables, like the nightshade vegetables from my diet. I was having a reaction to nightshade vegetables or whatever. They can't believe it. They're in disbelief. They've wasted all this money and decades of their life going down this wild goose chase when all they need to do is remove a certain food from their diet. Anyway, right? And people think if they just remove gluten or they just remove sugar or milk, that's all, because that's like, no, it's like, no. Specific intolerances to the individual, okay? So anyway, let me explain, okay? This person had irritable bowel syndrome all their life. So I don't know what you mean by irritable bowel syndrome, because irritable bowel syndrome is a general name that we give a cluster of symptoms that can all have different root causes for many people, okay? But I'm assuming that you have extreme bloating and gas, maybe some intestinal bleeding, and you might actually shit out undigested food like I was. And it got really bad when I was a vegan, okay, for a year. That's how I figured out the actual trigger and the solution to my problem originally. So anyway, here's what's probably happening. You are consuming a lot of foods you can't digest, okay? And so you might be eating some beans, you might be eating some brown rice or something. You might be eating chia seeds. God save your intestine, okay? And what's probably happening is whatever you're intolerant to, you're eating this food and your body for whatever reason can't break it down, okay? And then it's going through your intestine and it might be damaging your intestinal lining, okay? It's probably scraping and scratching parts of your digestive system like your intestine. And then what's happening is that irritation of the intestinal wall, for one, it's gonna constrict and inflame, and then you'll get like really tiny poops or whatever, or your poop's gonna be irregular because your intestine is inflamed and the tube narrows. You can't feel it, or maybe you feel the cramping, maybe you feel the bleeding. And then what happens is your body responds with an immune response. So pro-inflammatory cytokines and what else? Like other immune molecules start to circulate in your blood, and that can cause pain, okay? So this can be kind of compared to exercise science research where we talk about muscle pain and soreness after training, okay? We don't actually know what the real cause is. Like we don't have proof of what causes muscle soreness after exercise. But the biggest hypothesis that has a lot of evidence behind it is pro-inflammatory cytokines and these immune molecules in response to muscle damage that can make you tired, and they can ruin your sleep even, and they can make you feel lethargic and depressed, but they also can cause muscle pain. And that's the main localized symptomology from the mechanisms after training is you have an immune response to the training that you've done. And so anyway, muscle pain can be caused by these immune molecules that are floating around, okay? So fibromyalgia can be caused by food you're not digesting, okay? And your irritable bowel syndrome symptoms. You're probably not digesting this food and it's fucking up your damn bowels and you're shitting out all the shit undigested and it's causing irritation in the intestine. And then you have the immune response that causes the muscle pain. And then also, it's going to be really hard to focus when you have all these pro-inflammatory cytokines running around, okay? Fatigue and also stress response and all these things can actually be triggered by an abnormal immune response like this, okay? However, this person also talks about ADHD. I'm going to make a separate video about that. So anyway, the same way that I solved my chronic ADHD or my chronic irritable bowel syndrome and my chronic psoriasis and autoimmune symptoms is the same way that my ex-girlfriend solved her psoriasis or solved her fibromyalgia. But now that we're not dating and shit anymore, and I don't, she blocked me on social media a long time ago. I don't know what she's doing, but I have a feeling she's eating those foods again. And anyway, it's the same solution that these thousands of people on a carnivore diet solve their issue. I'm not a carnivore zealot, okay? Because I recognize, look, it's not the plant foods or the meat that we're talking about here. What we're talking about is you're eating fucking foods your body cannot tolerate. They cannot digest. And as long as you keep these foods in your diet, you're going to continue to have these symptoms. And when you go to these doctors, they usually think, oh no, like freaking broccoli and broccoli sprouts, like Rhonda Patrick says, cauliflower, carrots, whatever, tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, sweet potatoes, brown rice, black rice, purple rice, quinoa, fucking almonds, amaranth, and all these other foods. They're like, oh, these are healing foods. These are good for you. They give you vital nutrients. First of all, you don't need any of those foods. They literally give you nothing you need to survive or feel your best. I used to eat a shit ton of those foods when I used to suffer from the same symptoms you suffer from. And so did my ex-girlfriend. So did all these other motherfuckers. Here's the thing. These practitioners, a lot of them, they're taught in their functional medicine degree. I was taught in my nutrition courses and things that these foods are healing foods. You need to eat your super greens. You need to eat your probiotics and your prebiotics. A lot of these probiotics, so if you want the video where I completely debunk the probiotic shit, I fucking destroyed that shit for an hour straight with timestamps. So I'll send you that damn link. That shit is not going to help you. There's no evidence that shit's really that helpful for these problems either. You're just paying for money that you could save by eating the meat and fruit diet for a while and then reintroducing one food at a time. Guess what? Your irritable bowel syndrome is probably going to go away. Okay? And your fibromyalgia is likely to resolve as well. Okay? And most of the people following my channel already know this because this is like the big kind of paradigm shift that I made a couple years ago that I preach in all my fucking videos on nutrition and how to resolve health problems. So get tested for Epstein-Barr, because Epstein-Barr can be a main trigger of this that nutrition might not solve, but still might solve. It might help the symptoms. Okay? But also go on this, just literally eat beef and berries for a while and see what happens. Okay? I can assure you your irritable bowel syndrome will go away. Because you're not eating enough. And another thing is, plant foods are almost entirely digested in the intestine by gut bacteria. Okay? Whereas red meat is totally broken down by stomach acid. Okay? Most people find that they can eat meat just fine when they have Crohn's disease and all these things. So many people have documented proof of putting their Crohn's disease into remission, diverticulitis into remission, when they remove the large majority of fiber, specifically from whole grains and beans, nuts, and seeds. The main reason why paleo was so successful, in the mid 2000s to like 2010s is because people are literally resolving fibromyalgia and intestinal issues and all these things on those diets. And it's mostly because they're removing foods that they find are actually fucking their intestines up. And just in the last 100 years, okay, humans have been eating these whole grain foods without properly preparing them. If you read the book Nourishing Diets by Sally Fallon, you'll see that these traditional populations for thousands of years that eat these like whole grains and other foods that are probably the main cause of like the breakdown of your gut lining. They're probably irritating your gut lining. These populations of people had to soak them for hours and days, sprout them, and then specially prepare them and combine them with other foods to help the digestion, because otherwise it'd get severely sick. Okay? I'm not saying these foods are bad for you. I'm saying, look, you better be very careful when you prepare these motherfucking foods. And if you have these freaking gut problems and then these autoimmune issues, you gotta be careful, man. Okay? It's not that they're bad, it's just for you, they're triggering symptoms. And most people never just ate them outright. No one just traditional people didn't just cook brown rice and then eat it after cooking. No, they had to do all these sprouting and soaking in an acidic medium and all this crazy shit. So anyway, yeah, go on the elimination diet. It really is that simple. Okay? Your doctors they're be like, oh no, you need the greens and you need the damn chlorophyll and all this other shit. And they're going to sound scientific and have all this like mechanistic jargon and reductionist pharmaceutical minded talk surrounding their protocols. And the reality is very, very simple. Your symptoms, okay, what you call IBS, what you call fibromyalgia, what you call ADHD. First of all, the diagnosis is meaningless. Second of all, the symptoms that you're labeling is what matters. Second of all, you want to do trial and error and see what resolves the symptoms, and then it's going to give you clues as to what's causing it. You go on this goddamn elimination diet that I keep repeating over and over again, and is very likely to solve your problems, and the mechanism is most likely the intestinal lining being broken down and then these immune molecules and blah, blah, blah. Now, as far as, a lot of people, they're really attached to, but I want to eat the grains though. You oh, my symptoms might go away if I do this, but if I can't eat the foods that are triggering the symptoms, then have I really solved my disease? And then they start to think, oh, it's a disease and all this shit. It's like, and they're like, oh, if I can't eat brown rice without having fibromyalgia, then I'm sick and I still need searching for my damn solutions. And on one level of things, yeah, maybe the elimination diet is just resolving your symptoms and not actually getting the so-called root cause, right? And maybe there is something that you can do that can get you to digesting the whole grains. But let's start with just removing the fucking problems that are causing all your physical suffering. Okay? Let me ask you, this is a really tough battle I had to go through in my mind. It's like, let's see. I spent years of my life spending thousands of dollars trying to get myself to resolve these symptoms and still eat whole grains, right? Because I was trying to be vegan for so long. Okay? I found that the whole grains were the problem, the beans and the nuts and the seeds and the legumes. That those were, if I removed those foods, I literally have no health problems anymore. But now I'm like, how the fuck do I force my body to be able to digest those foods, okay? Is the suffering and the money and the wild goose chase and all the focus and energy that's going to take for you to try to solve that problem, is it really worth it? Right? Focus on what we want. We want to remove the symptoms, right? We want to feel amazing without shitting blood out of our ass and our butthole becoming a solid shooter. We want to live our life without this mysterious muscle pain. That's what we want. Okay? Why don't we focus on doing things that provide us that, right? We obviously don't want to spend money, a shit ton of money. We don't want to be wasting a bunch of time with protocols that don't actually provide results. How much sense does it make to try to force yourself to eat these foods? However, I can make a video on, well, how the fuck do you get yourself to eat whole grains if you find that you're intolerant to them and this and that. I figured it out on my own. But what was I going to say? Yeah, focus on try to feel good first, okay? There was something else I was going to say. I forgot what it was, but yeah, that's the most important shit. So, I'll make more videos on this in the future. Look, I really hope that this person that I'm responding to actually listened to this entire video and is actually going to try this elimination diet, because you don't need to spend money, and you're going to really be awoken when you do this. It makes you realize how overcomplicated so many people that you looked up to make these shit. Dr. Eric Berg, Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Stephen Gundry, and all these doctors that you are thinking have the solutions to your problems. And then, you're going to be like, whoa, how come these people are making this shit so complicated? Well, let me ask you a question. How the fuck is Dr. Mark Hyman going to be able to, because and Dr. Mark Hyman's like one of the godfathers of functional medicine. How are these people like Dr. Mark Hyman, how are they going to make, 20 best-selling books about health if all that you need to do is eliminate food intolerances and remove foods that trigger your symptoms? They're not going to be able to make all these fucking diet books. They're not going to be able to have, imagine having a doctor's practice, right? A clinic, okay, where you're trying to help people solve all these health problems. And your main protocol is like, hey, here's what you need to do. Just eat 2 pounds of meat a day, eat all the fruit you want, and remove every single other food and drink from your complete program, and maybe allow yourself some coffee here and there, okay, and drink water. No supplements. Remove all the supplements that all these motherfuckers have you on. And then 2 weeks later, your patient comes back to you and oh wow, I solved all my health problems. It was that easy, And you're a doctor who makes a living off of people's suffering, and your patient literally doesn't need you anymore. They're not paying for your supplements. What the fuck are you going to do as a medical practitioner? You can't do jack shit. And then you can't make a living writing books about this, right? Because you need, just like magazines, they always need new shit, new crazy ideas. This is the nirvana of health syndrome. These people, they make your problems sound way more complicated than they actually are, and they may not even realize it. They may fully believe in what they're saying, so that they can get you hooked on their information, hooked on their supplements. They get you coming back to their services because they have the answers to your crazy health problems that you don't understand, right? And you're a rat in a spinning wheel getting nowhere. And then you also have these people like Dave Asprey. All these biohacking people and nootropics people, you have another health hack, a new health hack. And it's like the only reason why they make all this money doing what they do is because they are constantly creating a new problem for you and taking whatever simple problems you have and blowing them out of proportion so they can sell you a solution. Okay? A lot of these functional medicine practitioners, which by the way, I love functional medicine. Dr. Mark Hyman was like my hero at first. He was one of my biggest inspirations. Same with that Dr. Josh Axe. But legitimately, if they told you the truth, okay, you wouldn't need all this other crazy. You wouldn't probiotics. All these supplement companies wouldn't exist. A lot of the pharmaceuticals wouldn't be necessary. A lot of these doctors wouldn't be needed. And you definitely wouldn't need a damn neurologist, a gastroenterologist, a urologist, You wouldn't need these specialty doctors that specialize in different parts of the body. The whole body's interconnected. If you solve the intestinal issue by addressing the nutrition, then your neurological pain goes away, your fibromyalgia goes away, your ADHD goes away. Suddenly you realize, I don't need a freaking psychologist that specializes in the mind. I don't need a neurologist. I don't need a gastroenterologist. You know, all I needed was a nutritionist that understood how what I eat impacts all this. But no, we don't want it to be that simple. We want the wild goose chase. You know why? Because it takes advantage of our dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's responsible for seeking. And we're programmed as human beings to constantly be seeking new stimulation. This is actually the underlying cause of what most people label as ADHD. The constant seeking of new stimuli. And now we have the YouTube videos with the recommended videos on the side panel that you're probably like, oh, searching through all these other videos while you watch this video. ADHD is not causing your lack of focus. Your behavior of training your body to seek all these new videos and all this shit, that is training your mind to be deficit of attention. And the solution is changing the behavior. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Post your question, comments down below. I have way more to talk about this, but I've made so many freaking videos on this already. So if you're new to my channel and not familiar with this, post questions and I'll respond. Send me a private message on Instagram at Coach Wolfgang VL. And yeah, talk to me.